Well everyone, 2017 has been an astounding year musically. I've spent the latter half of this year bringing reviews on content I thought was worth talking about. I couldn't cover everything, but I'll never be able to. So instead of trying to cover more stuff, I want to spend this last month of the year putting an extra special spotlight on the artists who I've really enjoyed this year. Before we start this list off with Aha, I just want to note that only artists who have released at least one multi-song project this year will be on this list. Another important thing is that none of the artists on this list are better than any of the others on this list. This numbering isn't in terms of my preference, but more so of how I thought it would make for an interesting list. Finally, keep in mind that these aren't the only artists I enjoy, so if your favorite artist doesn't show up, it's nothing personal. These are just the artists I relate to the most, and whose music I've felt the most impacted by this year. With all of that out of the way, let's jump into this. I'll be walking you through Aha's record for 2017, what he stands for as an artist, and why he's in my top 5. Of course, this refers to Aha from an artistic perspective, and nothing more. I'd say Aha had a rather impressive 2017, as he really exploded onto the mainstream scene this year. Free Barabbas was a major success, but it seemed like he slipped back under the radar for a bit. SimIam was one of my favorite albums of 2016, but it didn't quite seem to generate the same response as Free Barabbas. He actually hadn't even planned on releasing music in 2016, and the year was overall a little quiet for him. If you ask me what made Aha come back so strong this year, I'd have to credit it to a multitude of things. For one, he's a hard-working musician, as dropping 2 full mixtapes only some months apart is a very big deal. He's got a strong manager in Welch, who is incredibly active in promoting Aha and the whole brand. Welch is also highly outspoken on social media, so he generates a lot of noise and attention, and regardless of whether some see it as positive or negative, Welch nonetheless keeps the brand buzzing and alive. I also think Aha is simply talented. He not only raps and sings, but he produces his own beats, and the help he gets comes from his closely knit team. On top of that, he signed to Reach Records earlier this year, which I'm sure helped to get his name around a good deal. Thanks to being a part of Reach, Aha featured on both Lecrae and KB's projects this year, and he's certainly left an impression on those two artists' larger audiences. He was also part of Lecrae's All Things Work Together tour, so even more people around the world were made aware of him. In short, this was a great year for Aha, as well as his manager Welch and his small but highly competent team. I suppose it's true that teamwork makes the dream work. If it wasn't clear before what Aha is about, it certainly should be now with Trillium 3 running around. Aha is not a black supremacist, nor does he promote hate against any ethnicity groups. Aha is a pro-black artist, which means he actively pushes to create a new image of what it means to be black. He's not trying to get white people to see it this way, but is instead speaking directly to black people. He tries to show us, through his music, that we can use our talents and be successful, without falling into typical stereotypes. An interesting deviation I see within his music is that while he's pro-black, he tends to have the most critical words for black people as well. While he calls out racism in certain white churches and their beliefs or unwillingness to accept him, he typically leaves the deeper and more intricate criticisms for his own kin. For example, all the way back on his Green Beans and Tuna mixtape, he mentioned getting made fun of for acting white. I've experienced this myself, and unfortunately, as it so happens, the only people that will accuse a black person of acting white is other black people. The acting white accusation tends to come when a black person deviates from what is expected and speaks, dresses, or behaves differently from the societal standard. In his song called Daryl Coley FLP, he makes a simple but deep reflection on the fact that white people support their own kind when it comes to musicians, but black people don't show the same support for each other. On his latest project, Trillium 3, he has quite a bit to say to black people. At the end of Get Rich or Die Talking, he intentionally leaves a voice recording of an actual conversation that normally should have been left out. In the conversation, Aha explains that he'll essentially dress up the song a bit, so that his listeners will have something to dance to, seeing as they don't listen anyways. This is a pointed implication towards his listeners, who are mostly black, and has to do with the idea that as this particular generation, we don't like to think and reflect on how we can overcome societal standards. hence why the song is called Get Rich or Die Talking. The song is actually elaborating on the complex situation of successful black people in the US who are obligated to simply enjoy their success without opening their mouths and speaking on anything related to racial inequality. By leaving that recorded conversation at the end of the song, Aha is showing his criticism of his listeners by implying his belief that they aren't even listening to such an important message and would rather have a song that sounds good. The song that follows this up, Dumb Dancing, elaborates further on these complexities. He expresses his frustration with his generation of black people, such as mentioning that we turn down opportunities to move up in life if it means we can still party and have our fleshly desires fulfilled. He also expresses disappointment with the fact that many black rappers these days are actually quite intelligent, but choose to pretend and keep things dumbed down. The worst part of it all is that, from his perspective, we as a people are fairly aware of what we're doing, and are just playing stupid because it works. As I said before though, Aha doesn't only criticize his own people, he realizes the oppression that black people face, even outside of the South, and has quite a few reprimands for certain white people. He rebukes the oppressor but also speaks to the oppressed, and reveals the ways in which they are guilty too. This is one thing that truly sets Aha apart. And when you look at the ministry of Jesus, he did a very similar thing, telling the oppressed Jews, his own people, that they were not simply innocent victims of the Roman Empire. I always hear the anti-racism sentiments in his music, but whenever he turns and says something reprimanding to black people, it feels doubly powerful. In my opinion, it's this balance that makes Aha's music so emotionally powerful without drifting too far in one direction. While I've definitely spent the bulk of this section talking about Aha's pro-black content, I'd like to quickly breeze over a few other things he talks about. Relationships. Not in the sense that he's struggling to find the right girl, but more so the sideways manners in which people would come at him, male and female in their own special ways. He often promotes an idea of keeping a tightly knit circle of friends in one way or another through his music. Being an outsider. This applies itself on many levels. He's an outsider for his skin color, his beliefs, and even for what he chooses to do in his music. Not being the one. Aha has frequently mentioned the fact that he's truly just a rapper, not a pastor or someone to look to or someone that can save you. He doesn't want people looking to him for all the answers or for help. This plays into the whole idea that once he becomes adequately successful or does what it is that he feels called to accomplish, he'll effectively disappear. He's not here to lead everyone, and instead simply desires to show his fellow black people that they don't have to come up in the way that this predominantly non-black society dictates. Overall, Aha is multifaceted, and his sharpest messages are often the more subtly implied ones. He seems to enjoy provoking the intellect of his listeners, but I do get the feeling he believes most of his listeners aren't actually listening. It was back in 2015 when I first heard this artist. What immediately caught me was the eerie feeling of his music. Suffice to say, it simply felt off. I'm not typically into artists that overall have a heavy and emotional sound, and Aha certainly has that. In all honesty, I can only listen to so much of his music before I feel that I need a break emotionally. The moods within his music can impact you for days and leave a lingering sense of whatever emotions were present in any of his songs. So I suppose what caught me with this artist is that his music is more than just heavy-hearted and emotional. It has a distinct character to it, and you can even see it in the art direction on all 5 of the Bimo and I mixtape covers. Within all of the heaviness, there's something just slightly silly in his music. Something a little loose and vividly colorful. I hear it in songs of his like 18-Wheeler, Sauce All On Me, Supreme, and Dirty Dan. He's still being serious in all of these songs, but he's also showing there's a sense of lightheartedness in his artistry, the ability to genuinely have fun and be youthful. It's that combination that catches my ear, and content-wise, I naturally have no issue with how often he relates things back to God in some way. If anything, it's especially effective that he does this, given how heavy and weary his music can feel at times. It's as though he's saying, hey, even with all this heaviness on my heart, Jesus still reigns above it all, and he can do the same for you. Indeed, it's a powerful message, and it's not a common thing for artists to do. His music runs incredibly deep, but doesn't run off the deep end in the name of creativity, and still points back to God in the end. He's quite candid lyrically too, so I never really pick up a watered down feeling from his stuff. Overall, it's this combination of things that pushes him comfortably into my top 5. Since most of you already know his music, I'll just mention my 3 favorite songs of his, and of course I want to know in return what your guys' favorite songs are. Starting at number 3, I'd have to say 2011 Million. Aha probably isn't the best singer out there, but he has a great ear for melodies, and I think it's pretty unique how much he likes to sing. This song is also emotionally powerful and conveys the triumph that comes with chasing your dreams, no matter what other people say to you. At number 2, I'd say Mama's House. This song is literally the hardest I've ever seen Aha go on a song, as he usually raps slower and more carefully. This song feels reckless, but in a great way, and when you listen to some of the lyrics, he's actually saying some very grave things. Of course, I have to mention MC Fiji's guest appearance here, as the energy he brought was simply undeniable. Between the production and the lyrical content, there's no way this song can't be in my top 3. At number 1, Aha's best song of 2017 in my opinion, I'd have to go with none other than Things I'll Never Try. This is one of his most simple songs I've heard, but also one of the most powerful. In the same vein as Purple Rain, this song is full of soul cries and the sorrows that come with a damaged relationship. It's incredibly relatable and feels quite a bit more vulnerable than his other songs, which make it hit really hard. So then, that's about all I'd like to say on Aha. How do you guys feel about the first artist of my top 5? Would Aha be anywhere in your top 5, or do you not really like this artist? Finally, what are your best 3 songs from Aha in your opinion? Make sure to let me know all of these things and more in the comment section. Thanks for watching everyone. Next Friday, I'll be back with the second artist of my top 5 list. For now, peace out.